hear an announcement. There we are. Excellent. We have a few more people joined. There's Sophia, there's Anne. How is everybody doing? And how has life been for you in the recent weeks?
Hi, you know what? I'm good, Jagathi. Good to see you. I actually started a new position in the middle of all this. So, yeah, craziness. We needed a pandemic for this to happen. But I'm thankful that I have something to dig into, or otherwise I'd be going crazy. So and it's at a point where I'll be traveling, but we can't do that right now. And so it's good, really good. I'm in a good position, thankfully.
But
how about you?
Congratulations.
Thank
because
you.
That's the kind of hopeful stories we want to hear, really.
Yeah.
I've been good too. I've been good as well. It has been interesting. Travel has been reduced, and the new normal of working from home and Zoom meetings. There's another name that came up. Ilka, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Back in California, so no longer in Boston area. But how's everyone over here been?
And let somebody else take that. How are people in Massachusetts State or Boston area been? All right, Kathleen, I'm going to have you.
They're either on mute or they're shy.
Yeah, Kathleen, you're on mute now.
Yeah.
I am on mute. I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Doing well. I'm living on the Cape, as you know, Jagathi, and things are a little bit quiet in terms of the number of people here. But from a business perspective, I think the virtual world has taken over, and things are definitely continuing from that perspective. But otherwise, healthy and well. Thank you for asking.
Fantastic. I see a few more.
Where in the Cape are you, Catalina?
I'm in Mashpee.
Oh, we have Mashpee.
You do? It's a great area. Really enjoyed it. I was living in New Jersey the last 7 years and moved back home last fall, and I'm loving it. Frankly, it's been a great change.
Peaceful.
Yes, very much so. I see Gretchen.
I've just joined, Catalina.
Hey, Gretchen, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Excellent. So glad you joined us.
I am thrilled to be here. I can't wait for this.
Excellent. So far, everybody seems to be able to join in, Jagathi. No major technical issues.
That's excellent. Should we get started? What do you think?
I think so. I want to make sure we're respectful of people's time.
Excellent. I did a little bit of corrective action here while I was waiting. But welcome, everybody. It's so great to see so many faces. I know that Zoom is becoming a way of life, but even then, it's great to see so many faces. So before we get started, hope you, your family, friends, all of you are doing well. Everybody is healthy and safe. On behalf of all of us at FintechWomen, welcome to this kind of first session of our virtual series. So we have, if you see me right towards the middle as I'm speaking, clicking on my keyboard, I'm admitting people to the meeting. So that's what I'm doing. While I'm doing that, just a couple of as introduction. These are definitely interesting times. Today's normal is unthinkable 5 weeks ago. We didn't have distancing in our vocabulary. All new things for us. And 5 weeks ago, FintechWomen in early March, we were getting ready to put out our programming for the rest of this year and also 2021. And we decided as we got into this world of COVID crisis and stay at home, shelter in place, we decided to go virtual. So this is our first attempt at that. We want to hear from you folks, what you think. So you'll be getting a survey. Please respond to that and tell us what you want to hear. But the idea for this, if I step back for a minute, we're calling the series FinTech and the Steep to Economic Recovery. As I was kind of preparing my opening remarks for this little portion, I looked around and I was struck by the impact that the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, everybody at the supermarket who make sure that we have milk and sugar stocked up at home. So what they're doing to our economy, in a big way, they are keeping our economy going right now. And that kind of leads us to the question, what happens now? What happens beyond? So with the next few weeks, through this series of programs, we are hoping to bring together industry veterans. I said next 2 weeks now. Every 2 weeks for the next several weeks, we're going to be bringing industry veterans, business leaders, thought leaders to us to really tell us how to think, how to make sense of navigating through COVID-19, all of this uncertainty. And more specifically for us as women in fintech, as the allies and champions of women in fintech, how do we come out of this stronger, perhaps better connected to sessions like this, and perhaps even upskilled? How do we make all of that happen? So that's our goal through all of this. And as we get started, before I introduce our guest, a few housekeeping. Most of you are doing this. If you're not speaking, please be on mute. And then if you have a burning question, ask us that on chat. I already see something in there, and I'll look at that in a minute. As well, when you get that survey from us, please respond to it so that we can bring more relevant conversations to you. So now, I want to introduce our guest. And I'm going to be doing Babara grave injustice by trying to shrink her massive, beautiful career into few sentences. So Babara is an industry veteran. She has been managing director at Detweiler Fenton, leading investment banking there, and also at CIBC Oppenheimer. She's led she's raised significant amounts of capital for technology, media, and digital companies. She's an entrepreneur as well. And more recently, Babara has shifted her focus to early stage companies as advisor, mentor, and investor. And like all of us, Babara is also finding a way through the COVID-19 crisis and has been, I remember, if I'm quoting you correctly, Babara, busier than ever in the past few weeks. So why don't I start there? Help us understand how the past weeks have been for you personally.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction. It's really wonderful to be on this call because I've had a lot of calls, like I'm sure you all have, with Zoom, Google Hangouts. I was on one yesterday. In any case, I haven't been on one that's exclusively women, and I think we all have a different set of circumstances than these co-ed calls. So,
can I ask everybody to be on mute, please?
Yeah,
I'm going to try and do that too.
So, yeah, it's been obviously challenging. People call, and I'm sure all of you, people call.
Sorry about that, Babara. I'm rapidly putting everybody on mute.
Okay.
And I think I got them all.
It's okay. When people call and say, how are you doing? I think our muscle memory makes us say, fine. And we're not doing fine. These are dystopian, confusing, challenging times. And when Jagathi said that we're busy, so I'm a co-founder of a company called Capital W, which was my successor company. We're an investment banking firm that invests and raises capital for women and minority-led companies, almost all tech-enabled. My partner in New York, Joyce Greenberg, is a retail and retail tech person. So we have a variety of companies that we represent, from pure retail, and you can imagine what those phone calls are like right now. I mean, a large retailer that we have as a customer, to fintech and clean tech companies. They're all nervous. We're nervous. But on a personal level, which really was, I think, the genesis of your question, it's a very tough time. If we have families and or children and or spouses and parents, and I've never seen anything like that. And I'm a woman of a certain age, and I've experienced the meltdown in 2001, the tech bubble. I've experienced 9/11. My office in New York was literally across the street at One World Financial Center, and that changed. And I also, like all of us on the call, I know this for sure, unless there's a teenager on the call, experienced the 2008 financial crisis. So we've all endured that and plowed through it, but this is something like none of us have ever seen. It's jaw-dropping, it's confusing, it's wildly scary, especially since I think women too are very passionate and concerned about what's going on. And when you see 3 or 4% of those exposed to coronavirus facing death, it's really extraordinary. So that being said, it's been a rough time in terms of how it's affected. I don't know, should I just delve right into where we're seeing the challenges in terms of early stage businesses? I don't know enough about the makeup of who's on the call. So if you want to guide me as to what you want me to cover, I'm happy to. And also, I'm very eager to get to a discussion and a group discussion, because I can opine all day long, right? But I'd love to discuss it.
Absolutely. So one thing I'll encourage everybody to do, drop your questions onto the chat. Let's get into some meaty discussion with Babara. So Babara, perhaps in broad strokes, right? What are you seeing? So we're all interested in that intersection of financial services and technology. So what are you seeing in that from the market? What are you seeing, institutional, startup? Where do you think we are at a time like this?
So because most of our companies, we do have some large ones, but they're early and mid-stage companies, and they're almost all tech-enabled. And most of them have raised a seed round, an angel, friends and family, and typically a seed round. We typically raise money for A rounds. So we're seeing not only what we're seeing with our own companies and our own portfolio, but I'm also, as you know, involved in Techstars and Challenge and other organizations where I'm a mentor and an advisor to these companies. And what we're looking at is massive panic and fear. And when you look at where the VCs' heads are right now in terms of what they're looking at, they have dry powder, but they are pretty much feeding their own puppies. They want to and continue to invest in companies that they think will be able to sustain the financial crisis and then come out the other end whole. And I think that companies that were well funded before the crisis clearly are in much better shape than the companies that are contemplating a round, because as we know, the valuations are taking a hit. There's a focus on safety. There's a flight to safety, sustainable business models, et cetera. So there's no question that the bar is much higher in terms of who gets funded, valuation levels, and just sustainable business models. So it's a challenging time, to say the least.
So we actually have a question come in, and then this is in line with what you just spoke. So I'll ask this. The question is asking us, what are your thoughts, or asking you, really not us, but what are your thoughts on how quickly investment in early stage startups will pick back up? What will need to happen to meet that timeline?
Well, so again, I tend, because I guess I am of a certain age, I believe that there are so many ripple effects that are going to come out of this. If we're facing 15 to 20% unemployment by the second, third quarters, that's a lead indicator. And following on to that is some massive macroeconomic impact. Because of that, many companies will go down, right? And I think that we're looking at an environment where the strong will survive. Unfortunately, it's quite Darwinian. But we also see certain sectors that will do really well, right? And I think that I look at tech-enabled companies that are able to tighten their belts and have already a very hard-headed business model are going to do well. They're going to do well. There's a lot of guys that won't. And then we see, we see the big movers like, payments, innovative payment companies, blockchain, robotic process companies, insurtech will do well. The ones that have the right business model and were lucky enough to get financing before the meltdown. And then some of them that didn't get financing but have a very unique model that can capitalize on the digitization that we've gone to very early on because of the coronavirus. Those guys will do well.
So I'm going to put away my prepared questions because we're getting some really meaty ones coming in from our audience. And the second one is talking about opportunities. And I think it also ties in with the question really is, where are the opportunities? Have you seen the investments looking for new business models? And I might ask you to tie that perhaps with specific technologies in terms of what are you seeing in terms of technologies that are of interest out there?
So we know from the beginning of the coronavirus, let's say early March to now, we see what industries and sub-industries have spiked, right? So we know that food, we know that healthcare, media, pharma have just spiked, and everything else pretty much has gotten decimated, right? So we're looking at the subsectors are payments. I saw Sally Krawcheck on a call the other day, and she's talking about millennials and Gen Z, Gen Yers that are trying to consolidate, trying to get answers to questions like, I am now hawking my 401k. Can I get loans against my 401k? So the fintech companies that are providing information and that can also have a human interaction component are going to do well, that have thought this model through, because not only is it just technology and digitization, but it's also a high touch. And I think that Ellevest has gotten that right, and a few other fintech companies. What were the other parts? What are the other things you,
so real technologies opportunities is there an ask for new business models?
So I think that we're looking at, because the environment now is, there's a shrinking amount of assets, right? So the big banks are more in peril than ever because they make their money either on a percent of assets they manage or on loans or on demand deposits, and that's all shrinking. So they're going to give way to the fintechs that are ready to lock and load in terms of diversification, answers to questions. And as I said, in terms of blockchain and the other large buckets, I think I covered them, but I'm happy to go back. I have a little list that I created for you. Let me just get to it. I also mentioned it in terms of, so there are companies like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Monzo, the UK virtual bank, PayPal, Revolut. They're really well positioned because they're not strapped with bricks and mortar, and they are digitized and also have the ability to scale and handle an enormous amount of calls. And they have AWS has already anticipated large volumes, nothing like this, but are much better positioned than bricks and mortar banks that are getting calls and can't handle them.
So you're really seeing a pattern where the fundamental notion of fintech, that the fact that they're not burdened by architecture, the baggage of brick and mortar, you're seeing those kind of companies strengthen, and possibly at the cost for institutions, perhaps, in the longer run?
Yeah.
So before you respond, yeah, because I think, again, we have a couple more questions here that are really nice. What marketing, and so this might be something you might even choose to take offline, but it's a good question, so I'll ask this. What combination of marketing or share of voice do you recommend for branded, well-funded, or launching fintech? So for the early stage companies, how can they make themselves be heard today?
And what kind of company specifically? I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of it.
Already branded companies,
Right.
well-funded, or just launching?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what subsector you're engaged in, right? So the existing versus
Agreed.
Existing versus new fintechs. You know, again, for instance, SoFi. Go ahead.
Interrupt you there, but I also understand, as I'm asking that question, that it's really hard for anybody to have a clear vision to what voice would be. It feels like we're so new into this new world to recognize what voices would be heard the most. At the same time, from your experience, it also seems that some of what you have learned in our living through previous crisis would be the answer for it too. In terms of putting the head down and getting things done, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer the question. I think that it just varies. Listen, let's just be honest. Fintech deals have collapsed, not just since the beginning of the coronavirus, but the valuations were lofty. I think we've just hit the 9 straight month of fintech deals, the amount of fintech deals going down. And it's a challenging environment for anyone. So I can't really say with authority, gee, there are certain small subsectors that could thrive. I think I named them. I think the ones that are focused on high touch assistance to all of us that are struggling with very decimated portfolios will survive. And those were fun. In terms of getting airtime and having a digital marketing strategy, yeah, I'm sure there are opportunities. I just really don't know. I can't be specific about how that would shake out.
Yeah, that's helpful. Well, can I have you shift towards perhaps something more personal, in terms of opportunities so we are women, or our audience is mixed, largely women in fintech, allies and champions of women in fintech. And the question I have is, as we are living through this, in fact, one of our guests is asking, what are you reading as you live through this and come out of it? But also extending that, very often times like this is an opportunity to regroup and perhaps strengthen our skills and do other things to take us out of this anxiety mode. What is your advice for us as we navigate through this time?
Well, personally, I think that having a very organized day and focusing on your work, in real specific time segments is good for me, right?
Yeah.
But for women, I don't want to forget what I was working so hard. I'm on the board of ABL here in Boston, which is kind of like the Chamber of Commerce, a progressive Chamber of Commerce, and other not-for-profits. We spent a lot of time focusing on women entrepreneurs, their share of venture money. As you know, it's horrible. It's 7 to 8% arguably. And women in the venture world, how are they going to grow other than organically that most women-led companies grow? So I'm very focused on that. I'm trying not to lose my focus on it. I had a terrific conversation with a company that I advised. I'm sure you all know YW here in Boston, run by Beth Chandler. And the focus is on, she said, she makes a good point. It's not just, we always think of women and women that left, great jobs in banking or the financial sector or consulting and go on to start a business. But when you really think about who's getting hurt, what women are getting hurt in this economy, even, women are almost half of all businesses in the United States, right? But those women-led businesses are in those subsectors that are getting creamed, like hair salons and nail salons and hospitality, food services. And that, therefore, women are getting hurt disproportionately in COVID-19 because of the kind of businesses they own. So she and I are talking, as we are at ABL, as to how to advise women on how to take advantage of some of the PPP and other plans that are out there in terms of securing financing and loans and getting help. And so I try not to just be, have my little MBA hat on, but have how do we help women in this environment? Because it's going to be rough, and it's just started, right? You see places like Georgia where people are taking outsized risks. There was a woman interviewed on, I think, PBS last night who owns a hair salon. And she said, I know it's probably not safe, but I need to feed my family. So there are other considerations other than just all of us that have these wonderful, we're not in an existential crisis. Maybe some of us are, but I think we're in a different situation by and large. That's what's on my mind.
I think that's so helpful, especially how you started it off by saying have a structured day, because much as I try to do it, every day seems like Monday to me. I come in unprepared and I'm trying to figure out what I need to do every single day. So keeping in mind, so we do have a couple more questions that are more towards fintech, but then I am also seeing the time, and I want to ask a question because it's been on our mind from a fintech woman perspective as we are trying to figure out what will be of interest to women through these series of conversations, or our members and audiences through this series of conversations. And one of the topics that we have kept circling around, which I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I know everything else that you do, you also teach at one of our local universities. There's often an opportunity to go back to school at times like this and gain more skills. Do you foresee that happening at this time? Do you advise that, or are there other methods of upskilling that can be done at a time like this?
Yeah, the one thing, as they say, never let a crisis. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and that's kind of a harsh thing. A guy said it in the last one, but there is something to that. One of the things that I've seen, we have a company that is a ed tech company in our portfolio, and certainly COVID has accelerated virtual learning, remote learning. And I think that the world is going to change and not come back in terms of remote learning. And it's an opportunity. If you think of four-year college being between 80 and 100 grand a year and all the student debt that entails, there's going to be a terrific opportunity for remote learning, but in a collaborative way. It's not like these MOOC courses where people drop out. Like 90% of people that start MOOC don't finish them. However, engaged remote learning is not only effective, but it's very cost effective and efficient. And I think we're going to see an enormous amount of that. So not only where you have to pay, but that companies will pay. Because they now see that retention is a problem. Maybe not now because people want their jobs, but the ability to learn on the job and have the company pay for that, like what Coursera and some of the other ed tech companies do, is going to be massive. So to answer your question directly, I think there's going to be a lot of creative ways to enhance your skill sets and even get credentials to pivot your career path or augment the skills that you have to be able to see a better promotional track for yourself.
That's awesome. Great. I'm seeing the time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And want to close it with combining two questions that came in, bringing us right back to fintech and conversations on that. The question, I'm combining the two questions. The question is this: do you see certain fintechs becoming more relevant or gaining more importance gaining importance quicker because of COVID? And there are some great companies like Venmo and Square that came out of the 2008-2009 crisis. Will fintech investors generally pull back or ask questions to get better valuations?
No, again, I don't want to get too granular.
Yes.
I think that, yes, payments have spiked, right? And wealth management in terms of optimizing portfolio have spiked. Online lending is going to spike. And I think that those companies that have the best model have a really hard-headed model and that have runway. Otherwise, there's going to be an enormous amount of M&A, right? So the largest well-funded fintechs and the bricks and mortar committed large financial institutions are going to be buying because now they see that they kind of missed the boat. So I think there'll be an enormous amount of opportunity. But yes, no question that those 3 or 4 subsegments in fintech are going to ramp.
Excellent. So we are right on time, or maybe just half a minute more for any last question that's coming up. I'm going to hold up, and there's one. You mentioned women being most affected by COVID. How do you recommend smaller businesses to get ahead in line for PPP? Do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, there's so many good websites on it. Fast Company did a really good piece, I think 2 days ago, on how women can capitalize on securing PPP funding. I would go to that. I'm happy to send it to you, Jagathi, and you can distribute it.
And I will share it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunity, and there'll be more waves as we know, because as soon as the PPP is released, it's gone, right? But there's a lot of pressure on continuing to release tiers of funding. But it is, we all should be taking advantage of it. A lot of these loans will be forgiven. You know, we learned from the last, right? We learned from the last recession in 2007-8 that TARP funding was very successful. But I think this time, obviously, it's much more severe, and there'll be forgiven loans like crazy. So depends on also who wins in November. We'll see a lot of people. We won't get there.
Let's stay out of that conversation for now.
All right.
So I want to thank you, Babara. I know at the beginning of this, one of our early conversations prepping, I wondered personally, how much can we cover in 30 minutes? And we covered a lot. So thank you for sharing generously. And for all our guests, what I want to share is this. So we kicked this off with this really broad spectrum of what's happening in financial services, fintech, and the world around us. And Babara has shared her views on how we can make sense and how can we stay structured through this time. As we go into the series, we're going to be bringing a combination of conversations around pure technology, pure fintech, as well as continued business and investment aspects as we spoke today. So please do respond to the survey that you get. I know this is my third plus for that, but please do so that we can bring in conversations that are relevant for you. And of course, if you know speakers or are interested in speaking yourself and sharing your thoughts, let us know. So thank you all, and we will be in touch over email. Looking forward to having you join our next session on May 6th, where we'll be talking about, in fact, upskilling and what can you do around that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Babara.
Bye. Nice to be here. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.